and welcome to Diecast Restos. My name is Jason and this is a Corgi Juniors 61C Ford Capri 3 S. This has been heavy-handedly repainted in a darker red than the shade that lies beneath. It's a bit muddy and is otherwise very play-worn. These did also come in silver and probably some more colours too towards Corgi's 1983 bankruptcy. I will restore this casting as always, but I'll highlight some casting details, including the grille and tail lights in a Restoration Plus. I'll also take inspiration from the previous artist's work, so instead of bright red on the mint model seen here, I'll paint it a darker shade as seen on a Capri laser here. The colour was called Lacquer Red, and here is a 3 S Capri for reference. The European Capri was built by Ford of Europe in Belgium, Britain and Germany between 1968 and 1986. The first generation Capri Mark I was designed by Philip T. Clark, who had been involved in the Mustang design program. In fact, the Capri was going to be named the Colt, but for Mitsubishi owning the trademark. Ford's intention had been to create a European pony car that was mechanically based on the Cortina. Unveiled at the 1969 Brussels Motor Show, production commenced with a wide array of engines available in order to allow the Capri to be affordable to as wide an audience as possible. Ford's Taunus V4 engines in 1.3, 1.5 and 1.7 litre sizes were produced on the continent, while the British plant at Halewood built Capris with 1.3 and 1.6 straight 4 units. Range-topping 2 litre engines were offered with the Essex V4 units in the UK and Cologne V6s in Germany. By the end of 1969, sports varieties were introduced. A 125 horsepower 2300 GT was offered from Germany, while the Essex V6 powered 3000 GT that was capable of 138 horsepower was built in the UK. The Capri had started being sold in Australia in May 1969, and in April 1970 it was offered in the North American and South African markets. The US spec Capri bore no Ford badges, as it sold through Lincoln Mercury dealers. The Capri received a facelift in 1972, having larger headlamps fitted while receiving softer suspension. After 1.2 million cars had been sold, Ford revealed the Mark II Capri 2 in February 1974, a car now more suited to day-to-day use following the 1973 oil crisis. It was shorter in bonnet length and also became Ford's first hatchback. This casting is based on the Mark III Capri, which launched in 1978. It was a slight update on the Mark II, with mostly cosmetic changes, including 4 round headlights instead of 2 rectangle ones. It was made to look more aggressive as the Capri's bonnet was pulled down over the top of the headlamps. Continental European sales of the Capri began to decline, but Ford focused their attention on the UK market, where the car had formed a cult following. However, the rise of the hot hatchback culture in the UK in the early to mid-1980s saw sales decline. In November 1984, production for the European market ceased, but production continued for the right-hand drive UK market. However, it was eventually discontinued in 1986. There was no direct replacement for the Capri. The Probe was a spiritual successor, although not a very popular one. What's interesting is that the 1970 to 78 Capri, that in America sold as a captive import without any Ford badging, actually sold 500,000 cars during that period. They even began selling the Mark II Capri in 1975. When it came to replacing the Capri in 1978, instead of basing the car on the Mark III, it instead used the Ford Fox platform, as used by the 3rd generation Mustang. It was now sold as the Mercury Capri. Interestingly, the 3rd generation Mercury Capri was based on the Mazda 323 floor pan, and this car was originally sold in Australia as the Ford Capri. Anyway, enough of that who called it what where business. Let's get down to this Restoration Plus. Now for the chrome interior, I've opted to redo the whole thing using my chrome pen. I'm not usually a huge fan of these chrome plated interiors, but it doesn't look too bad through the heavily blue tinted windows in my opinion. The engine bay is actually pretty detailed. This engine, the 3 litre S, was dropped in 1982 due to emissions regulations in favour of the 2.8 injection. The Essex V6 3 litre S had been the Capri's range-topping unit since 1969. Now I'm just applying the finishing touches to this interior, and doesn't it look better for it? I'm very happy with that. Now here is my colour of choice. Like I said earlier, this is reminiscent of the lacquer red used on some Mark III Capris. Indeed, it is the first colour I think of when I think of the Mark III. I don't know why, I didn't or haven't known anybody who's owned one, but I think it'll really suit the finished product. Next I detail the plastics, always a favourite part of the job for me. I'm laying down a chrome undercoat for the blue oval Ford badge and the 4 round headlights. Now I'm retouching the wheels. I decided to keep the originals on this casting as they were encased in plastic on the base and I didn't want to unnecessarily break it. I do have some RS Ford wheels that are earmarked for an RS 2000 Escort project that would have suited this to the ground, but maybe next time. So I pop some white over the chrome headlights and then brush on some Citadel for that extra dimension of realism, nearly forgetting the indicator cluster that isn't moulded in, but I instead draw the undercoat on ready for some period orange later on. Next I go to town on the window surrounds, door handles and that little rear wing with some black marker. The Sharpie isn't brilliant for this as it tends to run thin very quickly, but the result is decent enough after a second going over. Some more chrome for the rear light cluster base now. There's something so satisfying about drawing on these simple block clusters. Nothing over-engineered, just red, orange and silver or white rectangle blobs. And here comes my orange and red Sharpies to do that task. Now I use the orange again on the front blinkers. I've almost forgotten the rear end Ford badge, which sits just above the right side cluster. Finally, I whip over the panel lines with some Citadel gloss, again for some more realism and to give the panels an aged look at their edges. It works really well over the top of the black marker, particularly on those thick window surrounds. I mustn't forget under the bonnet too, and I dab on a bit just over the engine. I'll show the car off, hood up, at the end of the video. Now to put it all back together again, I didn't thread the posts as they were just too narrow. I shan't be gluing it back together either, as the post ends actually secure the base really well when pressed back together. And so here is the rather unpleasant looking Corgi Juniors Ford Capri 3 litre S, as it looked at the beginning of the video. A previous owner had done it no favours, coating it in rough blotchy red paint. It was a bit muddy too, so evidently well played with. The window piece was scratched, dirty and slightly paint obscured, but thankfully I managed to remove all the visible paint from the screen. So this Capri was looking pretty crap-eye, and here's how it looks now. I've coated it in that lovely Tamiya TS33, which has had a layer of clear put over the top. That front end plastic detailing makes a world of difference, enhancing the model massively. The window piece, as I say, is clear of paint in all the visible areas, though it was impossible to remove in the unseen regions. The backside looks far more complete with the light clusters, Ford badge and the black rear wing all added in. The wheels have been left as Corgi originals and have tidied up nicely. I would have changed them, not for wanting to avoid breaking the plastic clips on the base, and besides, they look alright. Naturally, like most of my builds, this has been dosed in Citadel too, to help add that aged appearance. I've really loved doing this Resto Plus, so be sure to leave a like and leave a comment if you'd like to see more too. Do check out and support on Patreon if you can. I'll leave a link in the description, but that just leaves me to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.